Okay, good morning, everyone. I know a lot of you in the room, but if I don't know you, my name is Gullu. I'm one of the core SMS teachers. Delighted to be here this morning. Our agenda will be start with some chanting and go from the chanting right into silence to kind of absorb or metabolize or receive the vibrations. Then I'll provide a little bit of guidance on the meditation and have a dharma reflection to share with you. And then that'll take us to about an hour. And then if you want to stick around for 15 minutes, we can have a discussion. So let's start with my favorite. The see number 5, Om Mani Padme Hum. Someone, I once heard a teacher refer to this as the Lord's Prayer of Asia. This is kind of a mantra that is known throughout cultures. I think even people in India who aren't don't identify with the Buddhist lineage know this Om Mani Padme Hum. And I've actually been around people who, when something troubling happens or there's bad news, that their innate response will be Om Mani Padme Hum, like just to kind of, um, the way we might curse when something bad happens, they invoke this beautiful image of the lotus and the jewel, that the lotus flower, the symbol of awakening, can really only grow in the muddiest water. And I think it's a beautiful reminder that awakening often comes from uh, metabolizing our internal places of that are muddy or messy. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Well, let's chant the 5 subjects for frequent recollection. Now let us chant the 5 subjects for frequent recollection. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Thus, we should frequently recollect. We'll do the Great Compassion Mantra. I'm going to play the recording for this one. Gullu, Gullu.
to ye so pa chi to yu ye shi pan la ye so pa lo la jin shi so pa mo la no la so pa ti lu sang la wo shi ye so pa so pa mo la shi to ye so pa mo ji la shi to ye so pa mo la mo je shi to ye so pa mo la jin shi pan shi la ye so pa mo pa li shan je la ye so pa nam mo la da na do la ye nam mo ye po lu je di sha pa la ye so pa nan ji jan du man do la pa to ye so pa Namo Quan Shu Yin Posai Namo Quan Shu Yin Posai
Wherever the awareness is in this moment, just noticing the Vedana, the sense of pleasant, unpleasant, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And then noticing if there's any reaction in the mind, leaning into pleasant, bracing or resisting unpleasant. Or maybe spacing out with neither. And as you rest the awareness with whatever anchor you've chosen, breath, sounds, body, periodically checking in to see how you're relating to whatever's arising in awareness. And noticing Vedana, a sense of pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. Noticing any reactivity to Vedana. It can kind of soften. Sometimes just bringing the half smile of the Buddha. This internal sense of receptivity, an attitude of welcoming, however it is in this moment. Enjoying what's pleasant without hanging on. And bearing what's unpleasant, knowing that it's not permanent. We'll end the meditation with a poem. To pray, you open your whole self, the sky to earth, to sun, to moon, to one voice that is you. And know that there's more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know, except in moments steadily growing and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like the eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky and wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathing in, knowing we're made of all this, and breathe knowing that we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion, like eagle rounding out the morning inside us. We pray that it will be done in beauty, in beauty. Eagle poem by Joy Harjo, the last poet laureate of the US. So I just got back from Colorado, where I was teaching at the Rocky Mountain Eco Dharma Meditation Center, which I highly recommend as a place to practice. It's beautiful land, modest but comfortable lodgings. And while I was there, Jesse Dow, who some of you may know, he's part of the Sangha, he's in the DPT training, is the executive director of that center. And he's been working with an indigenous woman who came there on retreat and had this vision that she needed to create some altars on the space. And so she happened to be there doing that during our retreat. And we got to meet her. And I was really struck. She's a young indigenous person. And when I introduce myself, or most of us introduce yourselves, I might say something like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a teacher, something that's very individual and it's about me and it's sort of something that I've manifested in the world. And when this young woman introduced herself, she said, I am the daughter of so-and-so. I'm the granddaughter of so-and-so. I'm the daughter of so-and-so. I'm the granddaughter of so-and-so. She just went through her immediate family, naming the names of all her, immediate ancestors, and then said, and all my other relations. And then, I might say, I'm from Alabama, or I'm from California. She said, the lands of northern Mexico gave birth to me. And I thought I was just so struck how, right down to the mundane thing of introducing yourself, that indigenous worldview reflects that we're a node in a relational web, that we are who we are by virtue of our ancestors and the land that we come from. I have I relate to this in other ways as a person of two cultures. That when when I was 18 and went to college, like I couldn't wait to leave home and form my new identity and become my own independent person. And I have cousins in India who are in their 50s and 60s who still live with their parents. And it's not a failure. Like I had to go home and live with mom and dad. It's just a view that we're stronger when we're part of this relational web. And I can see it in the mundane things of elder care, which so many of us struggle with in this culture, child care, so many of us struggle with. But when you have this sense of connectivity, so much loneliness in this culture and isolation, but that relational worldview is a kind of medicine for that. Not to say that it doesn't have its downsides when you're talking about culture in India, but that's something I wanted to appreciate. Uh, and I think dharma practice can really help us build a stronger sense of the relationality of our very being. If you follow the instructions in the Satipatthana Sutta, 13 times in that sutta, the Buddha describes mindfulness as being practiced internally. This is what we mostly do in Dharma spaces, awareness of this body, of this Vedana, of this mind, and nature unfolding within this mind body system. And I think, increasingly there's more emphasis, and I wish there were even more on the notion that we can practice mindfulness externally. So any external being to be aware of their body, their Vedana, their state of mind, which we can do quite easily, actually. Some of the ancient texts talk about mind reading, but mind reading can be as simple as noticing someone's body posture, noticing their tone of voice, noticing micro expressions that flash across their space that give you an intuition of what someone's feeling. And then maybe even when we drop back, when we find a place of simplicity and quiet, how we notice that the heart just naturally resonates. And Vedana is another way that we really come into the relational field, because we see that whether we're aware of it or not, we're relating to each moment in some way. And this practice of touching in again and again to see, how am I relating to this moment? The instant after Vedana. Vedana is said to be a universal quality of mind, that in any sense experience, there's the basically simultaneous arising of this notion of pleasant feeling, I should say, of pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And it's variable, it's conditioned, right? So one person might hear electronic dance music, Vedana is pleasant. Other person might hear electronic dance music and Vedana is very unpleasant. And even that person who likes to go to raves will find EDM unpleasant when they're trying to sleep. You smell, you see a delicious, what looks like delicious food and pleasant, and then you smell the food and you go, I'm not so sure about that, unpleasant. Or, I have a sweet tooth and I've sworn off sugar. So when I indulge occasionally, the first bite of cheesecake is so tantalizing, especially when you've renounced something. It's like, oh, it's so good. And then second bite, pretty good. Fifth bite, be neutral. And the second slice or the third slice, unpleasant. And that the reason the Buddha talked so much about Vedana, and that it gets its own foundation of mindfulness and the four foundations of mindfulness, which is quite interesting, because if you read that sutta and it talks about the body, there's like 8 different ways of practicing with the body that each have their own technique. And then the next foundation is just the simple experience of pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, neither. But it's a great place to break that chain of causality that ultimately leads to dissatisfaction, to stress, to suffering. Because the habitual tendency is so strong that when we experience pleasant, we really lean into that. Maybe we want more. That's how it is with sweets, which is why I've sworn off them. One bite, I want another, I want another. or the way, we tense or brace or get into a lot of discursive thinking when things are unpleasant. One thing I've noticed as I've been teaching more and more meditation retreats is that people will describe the experience of struggling. They'll say, "I'm really struggling here," and you drill down and you ask, what are you struggling about, or what is this sense of struggle that almost without fail, there's some unpleasant feeling tone, and there's a struggle to make that unpleasant feeling tone go away. And sometimes just the illumination of that can kind of like you can kind of breathe more easily because it's just a feeling and it will pass. And actually will pass more quickly and more smoothly. That energy will move through the system more nimbly if we aren't in resistance. If we can soften and surrender to the truth of this moment, and then we only have to do it for this moment. And the word Vedana comes from a Pali word, Vediti, which means to see, to sense, to know. I've heard Vedana described as a different way of knowing. In the poem I shared, she's talking about things you cannot know except beyond words, different circles of motion. I feel like Vedana is this different circle of motion. The experience of Vedana itself is wordless. We often very quickly add words on top of it, but it's a kind of wordless, it's a different way of knowing. The other reason I think Vedana is so important is that when we really investigate almost every decision that I make on a day-to-day basis, moment to moment, you know, adjusting myself in the seat or subtlest movements is some response to seeking something pleasant or avoiding something unpleasant. And at the most micro level. And nothing. It's not a condemnation of that. Of course, it's nice when the body is comfortable and the conditions are optimal. But it often leads to this kind of paradigm, this worldview that the recipe for happiness, for well-being, for all the things we seek is to perfectly arrange the external conditions, uh, push away the unpleasant, only have pleasant. Uh, Social media is pretty good at this, regardless of your proclivity. If you want to see pleasant, it's well on offer. If you want to see unpleasant, it's also on offer of greater and greater intensities. But of course, you can't arrange this. Usually, can't arrange the conditions perfectly, especially if you're in the human realm, as we are, and all the things that we can condition, all the things that we can put into space are inherently unsatisfactory, inherently subject to change. And although, as personally as we might take our circumstances, really just some manifestation of nature, cause and effect. Sarah often, talks about being the national wrestling champion and raising his arms in victory. And he says, like, how long are you going to keep your arm up there? Like the all it takes to get to that moment and maybe worthy, spent a worthy expenditure of time and energy, but all that it takes to get to that moment is that one moment of glory. And then you're already thinking about next year and got to keep training. And so I think the message here really is to, can we only can we enjoy the journey? Can we be, engaged in things where it's the doing of the thing itself that brings satisfaction and pleasure? And having been just on retreat, this retreat is different. Sometimes when I go on retreat, there's a lot of things you have to do, a lot of people you have to see, meetings and planning. And this, one thing I like about Rocky Mountain Eco Dharma Center is that we did all the practice, weather permitting, on the land. So we're all together practicing most of the time. And so the perfect conditions in my mind right now are the condition of, like, not being too busy, kind of moving from doing to being, moving from thinking to sensing, and then stepping more directly into this relational field. And, when you're in the Rocky Mountains at 8,800 feet, relatively isolated, very quiet, there's a sense of vibrancy in just that sense of vibrancy in the trees, and the moose that we saw from a distance, and the deer that came really close, and the constant singing of the birds and the flowing of the stream. So simple, actually, for all the aspirations I might have in the world and all the things I want to do and create. Uh, Something just profoundly healing about that simplicity. And I think this is a way we can orient our meditation practice to have it be, um, maybe we can't always go into the woods and sit at the base of a tree or an empty hut, uh, but that we can seclude the mind. We can go inward in a way to have a respite from all the activity and turmoil and complexity of the world. It's going to end with another poem, but it's not on my screen anymore. Okay, this is called Whatever Doesn't Serve by Dana Faltz. What weight can you put down right now, willingly relinquishing the pointed quills of guilt or judgment? What burden of the heart can lift? What dark corner can be lit? The candle flickering at first and burning bright. With the next breath, let go. Let it go, that old story you've told yourself a million times. Whatever doesn't serve you on this path of truth, leave it behind. Offer this one gift, the simple sacrifice and the giving that sets you free to fully live. So thanks everyone for being here. Same time next week. Everybody be well.